Hi, I'm Susan Crowell with My Autism Ally, and we are here with Partners in Autism to discuss the new Indiana Medicaid requirements and rumored changes. So we're going to get the answers to your most pressing questions by breaking down the impact this will have on our community and ABA. Courtney, can you talk more about how these changes will affect the availability and the accessibility of ABA therapy for children with autism?
Yes, so across the board, if we do have those cuts, one, you have children who still need ABA therapy services who at that 3-year mark, if that does go through, your services are ending. That doesn't give providers a lot of time to figure out a transition plan, to figure out what's next, to give families a lot of time to really adjust to the fact that they now don't have somewhere for their child to go. Mm-hmm. So that is going to be the biggest thing. Obviously, the families are our biggest concern that are going to be impacted. But providers are going to have to make changes. There's going to be cuts, which means that could be cuts to staffing or support staff, things like that. There's the added cost of the background checks. There's the added time of getting the MPI numbers. And this is on top of all of the other training that's already required. That RBT training, which is about how long, Kelly?
40 hours just for the training in modules that's required by the board, on top of real-time training down on the floor with children to make sure that they can truly implement the skills being taught.
So all those are just, it's going to slow down services, which it's already slow right now. The wait list to get an assessment, to get that diagnosis is slow. Every reputable center in the area has a wait list, and even that's some in-home providers too. Every center has a wait list. Most are at least 6 months. Some are upwards of 2 or 3 years. So, and then on top of that, now this is going to slow down staff coming in, which is just going to add to those wait lists, going to add to services not being available to those who need it.
Kelly, how does this align with the research showing the benefits of early and intensive ABA therapy?
That's a really good question. If services take longer to obtain, that early intervention window is going to dwindle really quickly, and receiving true early intervention services is already difficult to achieve based on those huge wait lists that Courtney already mentioned. Receiving an autism diagnosis can take 8 months to a year on its own, and then the large wait list to begin ABA therapy can hinder an individual's ability to access ABA for years at times. These changes that Courtney mentioned will inevitably make accessing ABA at an early age even more challenging than it already is. Research shows that the earlier the intervention, the more effective the treatment will likely be. What research does not suggest is that 3 years of ABA services or 30 hours a week of ABA services is effective for every single child with an autism diagnosis. It appears that Medicaid decision makers have looked at the minimum number of hours and years that ABA has been proven to be effective, and they've made that their cap. This is quite literally turning a treatment that's designed to be individualized into a cookie-cutter treatment. In the past, insurance companies have discouraged and even denied services that appear cookie cutter, so these limitations are only making it harder to keep treatment individualized and centered on the child. It's ultimately taking the authority to determine medical necessity away from the credentialed individual overseeing that child's therapy.
Courtney, does the 3-year cap on services mean beginning now or all the previous years of ABA included?
So it will be all previous years of ABA therapy. So that is going to be if you started in-home therapy and did that for a few months, you moved to a clinic, you've done that for a few months, you were at this clinic for a few months, then you switched providers. It's going to count all of those services. Again, knowing what I know about the authorization process in Indiana Medicaid, I have to assume that they are going to count those authorizations and then they're going to end services. So that is going to be, each authorization is 6 months. So your first year is authorization 1 and 2, your second year is authorization 3 and 4, and your third year of services is authorization 5 and 6. And I just have to have that feeling that that's going to be their cap of services for us.
Well, and one of the things that I want to point out to listeners that are listening is authorizations do not mean you're getting services. Your ABA provider can be getting you an authorization and they don't have staff, and therefore they're using up potentially 6 months of your ABA, or up to 6 months for that authorization, while they're in search of staff. Yes. So I think that that's something that you as a parent are going to want to be paying very particular attention to. If you're unhappy with an RBT, like in your in-home setting, and they are like, well, I don't have anybody right now, but we'll get somebody for you as soon as we can, that clock's ticking. You're using ABA services whether your kid's getting them or not.